Hey everyone, and welcome back to round 3 of the Portland, Oregon State Championships. On your left, you have Graham Westby, and on your right, you have Jacob Van Wagner. If you've been watching our streams for any amount of time, Jacob should be a pretty well-known name to you. He has won the regionals hosted at this location in Oregon twice. He has also, sorry, just fixing some audio things. He is about 30 points away from his invite at this point. He's also won Oregon States once, I believe, so he just very one of the top players in Oregon and very consistent. Graham Westby, I don't know as much about. I know that he's playing Seismitoad EX, Crobat, but besides that, I haven't heard his name too much before. So I guess we'll see where it goes. You see Jacob's playing Fighting, a deck that I actually haven't seen too much of, although there is a little bit out of today, but throughout the rest of the states here, I haven't seen too much of it. Jacob is playing, I happen to know Jacob's list, and he's playing a pretty standard Fighting deck, Landorus, the one copy of Lucario, I believe, maybe two, Hawlucha, things like that, just kind of a super aggressive Fighting deck. And then Graham looks to be playing the Seismitoad Crobat deck like we talked about. We've seen that deck on stream before. Basically, it uses the power of Seismitoad's Quaking Punch. While very powerful, it is quite the low damage output, and so the Crobats and Golbats are there to help it out. The Golbat, when you evolve to it, puts 2 damage counters anywhere on your opponent's side of the board, and the Crobat does the same, but with 3 damage counters. So, kind of a way to mitigate the disadvantage of Crobat, which is that low damage output. And we see that Graham gets a pretty good start. 2 Zubats, those have free retreat. Gets the DCE on the Seismitoad. No Muscle Band, but he can't have everything. And we see Jacob, fine start for him as well. Attaches the Strong to the Lucario. Plays a Zubat down, and I guess we'll see where we go from here. So the unfortunate thing is that Jacob's main attacker in this deck is usually going to be Landorus, but because Landorus is weak to Seismitoad, it's pretty difficult to send up a Landorus. It's going to get hit for 60 after weakness every turn, or 100 if the Seismitoad has a Muscle Band attached. So I think Jacob has to try and rely as much as he can on Hawluchas and the Lucarios. Hawluchas are actually a fine attacker. They trade well with the EXs, being non-EXs themselves, and with things like Muscle Band, which Jacob likely will not be able to get out through a Quaking Punch lock, but if he's able to, can really boost that Hawlucha's damage output, in addition to Strong Energy, as you see on the Lucario. Yeah, so there's a knockout, player just confirming that it was indeed a knockout. Computer Search is the draw for Graham, so it'll depend on how things go. But yeah, Jacob's definitely going to go in as hard as he can with that Lucario. It is weak to Psychic, meaning that the Crobat and Golbat attacks will do more damage to it, do a relevant amount. But I don't think that's going to be all too relevant. Graham really wants to be attacking with Seismitoad. The reason that his deck is so good is because Seismitoad prevents the use of item cards. And without that, if he's just attacking with Crobats, even if it's doing a little bit more damage, you're getting a little bit of an advantage somewhere. I don't think it's where he wants to be. End's going to resolve. Jacob's going to go to 5 cards and Graham to 6. And there's a Muscle Band. Acrobike sees Versus Seeker Computer Search, discards the Versus Seeker, takes the Computer Search into his hand. Going to go ahead and Ultra Ball, discarding the DCE and the Verbank, leaving him with an N and a Computer Search in his hand. I don't know what's in Graham's deck. I imagine this is going to get another, yeah, got another Zubat. Another Seismitoad is also an option. It's just a matter of, the Seismitoad can be set up later, it can be set up in 1 turn, and the Zubats and all that need to be down for a turn so that they can evolve, and kind of just super scoop up tricks are available, and it's kind of just more relevant to get those cards down as long as your Seismitoad is fresh. And there's a Juniper for Jacob, not wanting to drop the 4th Zubat on the bench. I think he would rather just get rid of it, save that bench space for another Hawlucha. There's a Fighting Stadium, basic Fighting Energy on the Lucario. And there's the attack. This also is pretty interesting because one of the advantages of Lucario versus Seismitoad, in addition to not being weak to it like Landorus, is that its Corkscrew Smash ability allows you to draw more cards. So, no, sorry, it allows you to draw cards until you have 6 in your hand. And so it's particularly useful versus Exeggutor's Blockade attack, which disallows you from playing supporters. So, you know, the Corkscrew Smash can kind of act as a supporter. But even against Seismitoad, you're just digging deeper into your deck. You know, you're going to be drawing a lot of item cards you can't play, of course, but hopefully you're going to be drawing some supporters and just kind of digging deeper for the cards you need. And you see with the Fighting Stadium in play and the Strong Energy on the Lucario, Jacob's going to be dealing 100. So it'll be a 2-hit KO. But this is the bad part. As I say that, this is the bad part about the Seismitoad deck, and kind of what I think a lot of people find the Seismitoad deck overpowered. I don't particularly think that it's overpowered, but I think the card is very frustrating to play against because of what it does. We've had Item Lock before, but mostly Item Lock has been harder for the Item Lock player to set up, whether it was Vileplume and Undaunted, which requires a stage 2 that then cut you off of using items as well, or something like Gothitelle that even had to at least be active. Seismitoad gets to have Item Lock on turn 2 while dealing damage and attacking. It's just the most powerful Item Lock in recent memory. And then when you combine it with cards like Super Scoop Up, you see Super Scoop Up just took away Jacob last turn. Like, Jacob did build some board advantage. He searched some, drew some, got some card advantage, whatever, but it just basically blanked his last attack, and he gets to reset everything. And it's cards like that, and cards like Hypnotoxic Laser, which I don't think any of these cards individually are overpowered, but I think when you combine them, they're very frustrating and lead to a game experience that is just maybe not as fun. But I certainly think that Seismitoad, while it is probably the best deck in the format, is not too good. There are ways to combat it. Other decks do win tournaments. You saw a couple weeks ago in the British Columbia Provincials, the Kyogre deck just ran over it. So, if you want to beat Seismitoad, you can. And even if you don't dedicate a plan to beating Seismitoad, you can usually, not usually, but you can beat it. There are ways to win that are not just attacking it directly. So I wouldn't call it overpowered, but I certainly don't blame anyone for not wanting to play against or finding it unfun to play against. For instance, Seismitoad mirrors are probably some of the most unfun mirrors in the history of the game. So that's kind of my take on it. I don't think it's too good. I think there's been cards that have been better. There's been decks that have been more dominant. But I do think that the particular way that it plays with context to the other cards in the format lead to a very frustrating experience for your opponent, which is completely understandable. People play games for fun. Whether you want to win or not, there is some level of fun. And when when you can't play 20 of the cards in your deck, and every other time you attack, your opponent can Super Scoop Up, and half the time you can't even attack because you're asleep, it does lead to a frustrating experience. Jacob doing some cleanup on Graham's side of the board, just making sure everything's clear. Once you get to having things like multiple evolution lines out with a full bench, it can get pretty muddled. And you see Graham did miss a Super Scoop Up there, so it's not foolproof, and it looks like the Seismitoad will get return knocked out this turn. He did buy himself a couple of turns off of that, and that Crobat ability is going to go ahead and hit the Hawlucha. The 3 damage counters would not be enough to knock out the Lucario. So unless Graham has another plan, it's best to just do that, which he does. Quaking Punch for the knockout goes to 4 prizes. Jacob promotes the Hawlucha. So Jacob needs... Oh, he doesn't. He has a knockout here because of the Fighting Stadium. Attaches the Strong to the other Hawlucha. I think his hesitation there is just the fact that, well, the Hawluchas are fine attackers and do trade up with the Seismitoad. He does need to be building something else. It can't really be Landorus. So maybe he needs a trump card back to Lucario or draw a second one if he plays 2 copies. But he just kind of knows that these Hawluchas are not the be-all, end-all, and while they can provide some advantage, are probably not going to close the game for you just because of their low HP. While it is true they trade favorably, you know, the non-EXs, they can knock out EXs, they're getting 1 or 2 shot a lot of the time, and that's just when, you know, when you still need to take out 3 prizes, so 2 EX knockouts is what's most likely to happen, and your opponent needs the same, and your opponent is taking prizes quicker than you are, it can be pretty difficult. There's a Golbat activation, bringing that Hawlucha up to 50. And there's the knockout with the Crobat. That's another way that this deck can take advantage of things like that. And you see Jacob potentially putting the Zubat active, but I think that he didn't do that because he knows that if he gets Graham gets a Seismitoad attack off this turn, it would take a knockout on the Zubat because of the Muscle Band, bring Graham down to 2 prizes, just needing 1 EX knockout. So I think pretty wise of Jacob there to send up the Golbat, rather. May not end up mattering, but it is something, because of the laser, may not end up mattering, but it's something you need to think about, and I think that a lot of players would immediately go for what seems like the clearest option. And Graham attaches what looks like a Darkness Energy, although maybe it's like, I can't tell, it's definitely not a DCE, that's all I know, and ships the turn. Back to Jacob. Players get end to 3. Golbat activation there. And there's a Bicycle. Jacob is experiencing something rare. He's experiencing a turn where he can play items through Seismitoad. And there's an Ultra Ball, and he's taking advantage of it. You know, whenever you have the situation, you'll see a very common play you'll see is that players will, on the turn they have the ability to not be item locked, they will play a Versus Seeker and get back in Supporter even though they've already played a Supporter that turn. And that's just making the most of your resources. It seems obvious, but you're getting rid of that item, and that's, you know, you see Jacob Ultra Balling, just trying to kind of maximize this turn because he knows that this is not how things are going to be forever. And that's going to be a Colress for 8 for Jacob, so drawing him a fresh hand. And there's a Fighting Energy and a Muscle Band. 20 damage on the Toad with Energy. And you see Jacob doing that play we just talked about, versus Seekering for the Colress, even though he can't play this turn because he fears a Quaking Punch. And, you know, drawing 8 cards or 7 cards is going to be pretty big. Going to go ahead, deal 30 to that Jirachi, and put Graham in a position where Jirachi's probably not long for this world. Of course, Graham does have the Super Scoop-Ups, as we talked about. So, something Jacob definitely needs to take into consideration. And there's a Laser Heads. But there's nothing really Jacob can do about that. Like, he has to go for the play and make Graham have it rather than play around something that he's not even sure that Graham has. You know, again, one of the frustrating experiences is if Graham didn't have Super Scoop there, it would be pretty bad. But no, Graham just lasers. Jacob, he hits the flip, but Jacob wakes up out of it, and Graham passes the turn back. Jacob will get another turn of being able to play items, and this is pretty big. And there's the 2 prizes from the Jirachi. Oh, and that was even off of a... Wow, that's huge. Jacob swung the momentum so highly in this game. And there's a miss on the Super Scoop Up. Versus Seeker. There's the Lysander. Retreating to the Hawlucha, clearing up that poison.
Video game Premier players, round 2 pairings are up. Video game Premier players, round 2 pairings are up.
And yep, Graham's just going to go ahead and scoop him up, realizes he doesn't have any outs. That was an interesting game. Graham got, had a bit of a better start in the beginning, but Jacob was able to take the mid-game and just absolutely destroy. So, well played. Graham unfortunately didn't have much of a way out in those last few turns. And like I said before, Jacob is on his quest to obtain an invite to Worlds, just needing 5 more points, so he just needs any good finish here. I'm sure a top 32 awards that many, I don't know off the top of my head. But, so 2-0 here, we're playing 8 rounds, so he still has a ways to go, but moving on to 3-0 would do a lot to solidify that. Looks like players are still shuffling up. And looking around the room, most players are still playing their matches, not very deep into this round. Let's look at the pairings for this round. We have, let's see, where are the big name players here? David Cohen is 1-1. He's 2011 world champion, falling to 1-1. Jacob Van Wagner, as you can see, 2-0. Serena Radu, 2015 Worlds invitee, is 1-1. Tyler Namora sitting at 2-0. Not sure what he's playing. He's trying to get that invite as well. Yeah, let's see. We got Liam Williams, first seed in the top 8 of the 2012 Senior Division World Championships. He's sitting at 2-0 right now. So Michael Chin 1-0-1. And we're off. Both players open Zubat. Graham will lead us off, choosing to go first. Seismitoad with a basic energy, and there's the muscle band. There's the acro bike. It sees a Zubat and a laser. He discards a laser, takes the Zubat, plays the Zubat onto the bench. And he has an N as his supporter. Going to go ahead and fire that off. There's a third Zubat. Super Scoop Up is the draw for Jacob. And there's a switch, just getting that out of his deck while he still can. And there's a Super Scoop Up, gonna go ahead and pick up the Hawlucha again and just using these resources. It's also possible that he has a bicycle in his hand that he's trying to draw cards off of. No, just gonna go ahead and Juniper. He's discarding those cards anyways. So, might as well have some showmanship. There's the retreat. There's the Ultra Ball. Gonna go ahead and discard a Colress and a Versus Seeker. He has, I'm just gonna go ahead and get the Crobat. Keeping the Versus Seeker in his hand, I assume, because it's just a higher chance of it being very good if somehow Graham misses the Quaking Punch this turn. That's unlikely, of course, but it's going to be a lot more useful if that happens than the Crobat is in the dark. And getting the Lucario, of course. Talk about how Lucario was good in this matchup, and Lucario and Hawlucha just led Jacob to victory last game. Last game. And there's a Versus Seeker. Going to go ahead and get the Juniper back. Playing Lucario, but he's missing energy. I think that's what he's considering, is that He just ships the turn back. Doesn't want to get the Lucario damage before he even has any energy on it. Could easily see something like a Lysander or just some Golbat and Crobat activations, as you see now. And there's an Ultra Ball. Gonna get Super Scoop Up. And a Seismitoad. Not sure what's in Graham's hand, but a Jirachi would be a decent call here if he doesn't have any supporter. Of course, we saw Jacob take advantage of that Jirachi last game, and it's part of the reason he won, but you can't really be results-oriented like that. You know, Jirachi is so powerful that it's worth potentially losing some games to not just totally draw dead in some others. Because, you know, if you don't have a supporter early, it's pretty easy to lose the game as well. And Super Scoop Up is Tails. And there's an N. Both players resolving that in. Jacob making sure to do a thorough shuffling job. There's the Super Scoop Up. That's a heads. The head, and that will be the game. Wow. So, if you didn't catch that, basically the Crobat or the Golbat, because we can come into play, knock out the Zubat, and then because of the damage already on the Hawlucha, the Seismitoad will come in and Quaking Punch for the knockout, leaving Jacob with no bench Pokemon, punishing Jacob for not playing the Lucario, actually. Something Jacob might have wanted to think about, although that specific circumstance is pretty specific. I think Graham needed 3 activations there, so maybe that's something you can rely on happening, but it's definitely a decision to make from Jacob's side. And players shuffling up for Game 3. As always, On the Bubble is brought to you by Top Cut Central. Check out topcutcentral.com for all of your Pokemon singles, sealed product, and accessory needs. We've got Alan Wynn joining us on the mic as he's finished his round. How did your round go, Alan?
I had an easy matchup. It was Kyogre, or I was playing Virgin against Kyogre, and well, Virgin does what Virgin does to a Kyogre. You know, Mega Ball's Cannon.
So what's your record now?
2-1.
Moving on to 2-1. Nice. So what are you looking at as far as your World's Invite goes? Is that still in reach for you?
It is. I mean, I had to top at. In order for me to get my World's Invite, I'm standing at 110 points. Mm-hmm. So in order to get it, I need to top cut at a state. This is the last state, so I had to top cut here. Mm-hmm. And then also I'm tending to 2 regionals. I'm tending to the Seattle regionals and also Utah regionals.
Oh, nice.
So I'm planning to actually try to top those 2, and I believe if I actually top well, then I'll be standing a bit below 200 and below the World's Invite, around there. Then I'll just expect it to, because I'm going to nationals, expected to get the world trip off. Oh, the World's Invite off of Nationals.
Plus league challenges as well.
Yeah, I haven't actually got any points off of it.
So definitely, you're going to have to perform pretty solidly, but if you do, the World's Invite's still in reach.
Yeah.
So Graham's going to go ahead and take a mulligan. And Jacob going to go ahead and set out his 6 prizes. So you chose to play the Virizion Genesect deck today?
Again, yeah. I was actually gonna follow with my brothers and play Metal, but I decided not to, just because I didn't think we'll actually get all the cards, and I I had a bit more hope in Virgin this last tournament. So.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Looks like Graham's still resolving his mulligans here. So you went to Utah Regionals last year as well, right?
Yes.
Not too far of a drive or a flight for us here in Washington. Oh, and there's 3 mulligans on Graham's side. Not doing himself any favors. So Jacob's playing Fighting, playing Lucario, Hawlucha, Bats, and Landorus, and then Graham's playing Crobat Seismitoad. Just to catch Alan up.
And I'm assuming, is Jacob going first, or is Graham?
Jacob's going first. Jacob won game 1 in a reasonably dominating fashion, and then Graham, actually interesting situation last game. Jacob Ultra Balled for a Lucario early, but decided not to play it because he didn't have any energy, and just didn't want to get it Lysandered or anything. So, but then he had a Hawlucha and a Zubat on board, and Graham was able to, through a combination of Golbats and the Quaking Punch, knock out all of his Pokemon.
Oh, I see.
So sort of a risky play by Jacob. We were talking about it in between games. Sort of risky, but I understand why he did it. I'm sure he isn't happy that he did, but it's important not to be result-oriented in those cases. And Graham did need to get 3 Golbat activations, so it's not like he can rely on that sort of thing happening.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at that, I mean, Graham should have the favor of this matchup. Just because of the Seismitoad, you know, it forces Jacob to not bring out the Landorus, which is a really strong Pokemon in the other matchups. But then, you know, he had to now rely on the Lucario to bring out. And with, you know, the Seismitoads and the bat and stuff, it's going to be really hard.
Definitely. I think Jacob is just resolved to not bringing out the Lucario, the Landorus. It's just not worth it in almost any case.
Yeah, it's a free 2 prizes. And it's very easy.
Ooh, and a Jirachi start by Graham. Not the best, especially facing down Jacob's double Hawlucha start, Fighting Stadium, Muscle Band. Jacob going to go ahead and computer search.
I think he discarded the AZ and something else. I don't know what's that second card he discarded.
Going to go ahead and get a Zubat.
I mean,
Not sure
with all those cards down right now, Jacob is forcing Graham to actually put down any Pokemon. And with the mulligans, it seems like it's going to be a bit hard unless he's able to get just an Ultra Ball out. But if he can't get that Jirachi out, that's going to be a free 2 prize turn 2 for Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, Graham has just this next turn to get something. Of course, he's going to draw 7 fresh cards, 6 off the end, 1 for the draw step. So he should be able to get something. But even just having to leave that Jirachi active is not great. If he can't find a way to get that Jirachi out of the active spot, there'll be 2 quick prizes.
And it seems like he actually has an Ultra Ball at the second card that I drew.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and start his turn. Golbat is the draw. He does have an Ultra Ball.
The thing is, Graham's going to have to sacrifice that Jirachi in order to try to power up the Seismitoad, because I do not see a double Colorless in his hand, so he's going to attach that Water Energy, and he has a second one in his hand. So he's going to try to slowly power up that Seismitoad and let the Jirachi die, taking 2 prizes for Jacob.
And it will, the advantage that Graham will have here, he'll definitely be on the back foot, but he will get to attack the Seismitoad, or the Hawlucha with the Seismitoad first. So we'll get the first hit in there, which will lead to a favorable trade for him, except for the fact that Hawlucha is a non-EX Pokemon.
Yeah.
It also depends on the next few draws. He does have a supporter in his hand. I believe I saw Juniper. He discarded one of the Ultra Balls, so I can't believe he doesn't have another one. So he could have a switch effect into the double colorless, but he does actually just attach the water. Going to go ahead and commit to that. He also has super scoop ups in his deck, so that could work to lift up the Jirachi, but it's going to go ahead and Versus Seeker for the Juniper. Jacob's trying to explain how to high five when you Juniper with no cards in your deck. Sorry, in your hand.
Yeah, and Jacob, this is actually in Jacob's favor right now. Even if Jacob loses that first Hawlucha with the energy currently on it by the Seismitoad, he still has those 2 Zubats going into Golbats, so that's 40 damage onto Seismitoad. Plus, you know, the second Hawlucha that's already down there, unless he can't, you know, if he can't die. So.
Well, now Jacob actually doesn't have the knockout here. He's going to need to... Well, now he does after the Golbat activation.
Yeah.
I was going to say, he's going to need to defend the Golbat or the Fighting Stadium. But he chooses to Golbat at the Zubat, hoping maybe he can find Fighting Stadium and another Golbat off this end to take 3 prizes.
I mean, with the deck, it's getting a second Golbat wouldn't be a problem because you run repeat balls and ultra balls, and then just you run 4 of them. So getting the second Golbat wouldn't be a problem. The problem right now is getting that other Fighting Stadium. If I was Jacob, I wouldn't attach the basic fighting, because what happens is might be able to pull a strong energy and just attach it to Lucha, because you're willing to take 3 prizes for it.
Discarding, Ultra Balling, discarding.
And I believe Jacob's not actually gonna kill the Jirachi, because it's gonna be hard for Graham to pick that up. I mean, he's forcing a Super Scoop Up that he most likely needs for the Seismitoad or the Zubats. So he's forcing that Super Scoop Up, and there's a fail rate on it too. So even if he does what I believe it is, 60 damage? No, 70?
He's gonna do 80 off of the Muscle Band.
Yeah, so he's just able to Zubat or Crobat that Jirachi later in the game.
I don't know, because Graham does play Super Scoop Up, so I feel like you would rather just take the 2 prizes here and not let Graham get into a position where he can Super Scoop Up when he doesn't have a supporter in hand, and then find a supporter with a Jirachi again.
Yeah.
Obviously, if Graham doesn't have anything, it's going to be huge for Jacob. Landing another Golbat to get the Jirachi instead of having to use his attack on it's going to be huge. But I don't think you can rely on that if you're Jacob. There's a Juniper drawing 7 new cards for Graham, so I think worst case scenario for Jacob here is just Super Scoop Up, hits the heads, DCE, and just kind of undo all the work that Jacob has done. And there is the heads on the Super Scoop Up, so maybe I'm just being short-sighted. He just has a DCE in hand as well, so the worst case scenario is playing out. The Hoos is also asleep.
Are you a god at prediction?
I just feel like if you're Jacob, you just want to go aggressive there. I don't know.
I mean, I see what you mean about taking the 2 prizes. The problem with taking the 2 prizes is Jacob doesn't have any real setup as of now. I mean, if he does get end, he gets, or if he takes 2 prizes, he'll get end to 4 cards, and technically he might need those extra 2 cards for the Zubats and the Golbats and stuff, and also for try to get for another kill. So I understand how he's trying to stack away the damage, but he couldn't pull the Fighting Stadium.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, Jacob certainly knows the deck better than I do. I'm sure he knows it inside and out, and he knows the matchup better than I do as well. I don't know. If it were me, I just would have gone the aggressive route and sacrificed a little bit of building up my board.
I believe so. Like, right now, I think he currently needs to take the prizes, because it's we don't know when the time's going to be called, so it's best to take the early prizes now. And it's also 1-1 in the time. So.
Yeah.
And the damage on the Zubat was really questionable, just because most of the time it gets picked up, and it's not really worth taking that 1 prize off of the Zubat.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I just can't imagine that you wouldn't. I don't know. It's an interesting decision. I'm going to have to talk to Jacob about his thought process there. And there's the attack, bringing that Seismitoad up to 110. I'm going to go ahead and evolve to Crobat. 30 on the Lucario.
I mean, currently right now on the board was Jacob's, I don't know what's in his hand, but I believe Jacob actually has a better field right now, just because he has that 2 Zubats down for evolution, and he has that Lucario with a strong energy, ready to start doing, I believe, 50 damage, and also if he gets another energy, he can start doing 80 damage.
Yeah, and the Lucario, like we said, is, besides Hawlucha, is basically Jacob's only attacker in this matchup. The Landoruses just aren't worth bringing out, very easily knocked out. And the Crobats, although we did see Jacob attack with the Crobat last game, are just not very efficient attackers. And there's a second energy on the Seismitoad and the knockout.
So he tested second strong, so he's going to be doing 100 damage, which will be knocking out the current Seismitoad up there. And and he could also force the second Seismitoad up because he force him to try to get a Seismitoad double Carless up because Jacob actually put down 2 Golbats if he could pull them out. Put on the fresh Seismitoad, and then he's forced to try to get a new one, or it could get knocked out by the current Lucario.
Definitely. Ending him down to 4 here. I mean, 4 cards isn't nothing, but definitely putting Graham at a disadvantage. And I gotta believe Jacob will do everything that he can to try and be as aggressive as possible at this point, knowing that the other prizes are tied. Promotion of the Crobat. Acrobike finds
I think that's
Crobat and N.
Crobat. Well, actually, what I just saw in Graham's hand was a double Carless. So it is risky, but what he can do is actually
Take the
grenade hammer, knocking out the Lucario.
Absolutely.
And they're going to set Jacob really far back because Jacob would not have a current attacker to deal with the Seismitoad.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough, and Graham's gonna go ahead and fire off with it, and it's basically his last possible opportunity. And Jacob's gonna have to come up with something in order to win this game.
I mean, with the grenade hammer, that allows Jacob to play all his items in the next turn. So maybe, with the 4 cards or 5 cards Jacob gets, he might be able to pull, double Golbat and something.
It's certainly possible. Acrobike reveals Colress and Ultra Ball. Graham takes the Colress. And I think we're going to see Grenade Hammer.
But there is a danger of Grenade Hammer because just the damage you do to it. If he puts the damage on the Toxicroak, or not Toxicroak, Seismitoad, because he's kind of forced to. If he puts on the Zubat, it kind of allows him to knock out one of them.
Absolutely. It's difficult. Also difficult spot. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that playing the Seismitoad was even right, though, because I think you would rather have Jacob knock out a Zubat, go down to 3 prizes, and potentially have your Seismitoad.
And have him try to take the 7th prize.
Yeah, but I do know that Graham, or actually I don't know that Graham has a DC in his hand, but if he does, that totally explains playing the Seismitoad, but otherwise I do worry that might not have been that reasonable play. I think you're willing to sacrifice the Zubat there, but it worked out for him. Jacob goes ahead and takes a Hawlucha while he has the time to play items. There's a Super Scoop Up.
And I believe that's the Tails. Fighting.
Bounce the Verbank.
Drawing 3.
Another Super Scoop Up and a Heads. Takes up the Golbat, takes the energy off of it, knocking out the Zubat here. And the position that Graham is in here is that, all the Pokemon on Jacob's side of the field are non-EXs, so even though you can knock them out a little bit easier, he will be taking 1 prize each time. So we'll see how things work out. I'm not sure. I would still heavily favor Graham here. He does have the DC in his hand for the second Seismitoad as well, but Jacob can definitely pull us off some. Maybe an end to 1 meets a Hawlucha. Attack and do the Seismitoad. I mean, we'll have to see, but I don't think.
Yeah, what Jacob can do is, if he has a Lysander in his hand, he could try to Lysander the Seismitoad up and hit it with the Hawlucha, so he's able to stall out that 1 turn, even when he takes that 1 prize. And then
I think this is actually going to be it here. If Graham can find the second Golbat, he's going to do 20 on the Zubat.
Yeah.
And hit the Grenade Hammer for the knockout. really unfortunate way for things to go. Jacob Van Wagner dropping to 2-1, Graham going to 3-0. Unfortunate for Jacob, at least. I'm sure Graham's pretty happy about that. One of the powers of the Crobat deck, and I have to believe that if I were Jacob, I just would have gone for that.
The Jirachi in the beginning, yeah.
Obviously, you know, it's easy to say that Jacob would have had one prize left. We don't actually know how the game would have turned out because this would have been different. But I have to believe just being more aggressive and being having more cards in your hand from the prizes, being a lower prize gap, which would have been better for him. But
yeah, I believe in just in the state of the game, it would have been better for Jacob to actually go for the Jirachi kill.
Get in the frame now.
Yeah, just because you take that 2 prizes, and right now the set of the game is third game. We don't know how long it is into time, so trying to reach for the most prizes and getting close to that turn 3, and then try to reach for that 6th prize. It's probably the highest chance you have. And on top of that, he had the Jirachi back into his hand and he never played it, so there's that possibility of him using it again.
Yeah, exactly.
As a supporter.
Obviously, like I said, I'm sure Jacob had his reasoning. I'm sure it is a decision to make. It's not just a very clear, you know, there is things to consider, but I definitely would have gone for that. Anyways, thank you, Alan, and we'll be back for round 4.